My name is Paula, and I will never forget the night my husband humiliated me. Betrayal is cruel, but it often hides behind closed doors. Humiliation, however, is more vicious because it is public. It is a wound inflicted in the open, with witnesses to your pain, when the man you trusted most decides to turn your love into a weapon. That night was supposed to be about celebration. Damian, my husband, insisted we attend his company's annual gala. "It is important," he told me as he adjusted his cufflinks, his reflection glowing in the mirror. "The executives will be there. They need to see us as the picture of success." He looked at me with a smile that wasn't quite warm. "Wear something unforgettable. Look like the wife of a man destined to climb even higher." I should have heard the warning in his tone, but I didn't. I believed him. I believed the gala would be a chance to stand beside him, to share in the world he was building, to finally feel as if I belonged there. I chose a gown of midnight blue silk. It was my favorite, not drenched in designer labels or glittering with diamonds, but cut in a way that made me feel tall, confident. I paired it with pearl earrings that had once belonged to my mother. They were not extravagant, but they carried something more meaningful. Legacy, quiet dignity, strength. As I fastened them, I whispered to myself that I could stand tall no matter what the evening brought. When we arrived, the ballroom shimmered with light. Chandeliers sparkled above polished marble floors, their crystals scattering golden beams across the crowd. A string quartet played softly in the corner, weaving elegant notes through the hum of conversation. Waiters glided like shadows with trays of champagne, the bubbles rising in slender glasses. The air was thick with perfume, polished ambition, and the kind of laughter that always sounds just a little too rehearsed. Damian fit right in. He had always been charming, smooth-tongued, the kind of man who could slip into any circle and make people laugh. He guided me from one group to the next, his hand resting lightly at the small of my back. I smiled, shook hands, and nodded at stories of mergers, promotions, and wealth. For a while, I thought maybe this was what partnership looked like, being welcomed into his world, being recognized not just as his wife but as part of his success. Then came the moment that changed everything. We were gathered near the grand staircase when Victor, one of Damian's colleagues, lifted his glass toward us. "To Damian and Paula," he said warmly, his voice carrying over the music. "You two are the perfect couple. Anyone can see how much you complete each other." The words should have been a simple kindness, but Damian's laugh cut through the air like a blade. "Perfect?" he repeated, his tone mocking. He let his smirk spread slowly, deliberately, as though savoring the performance. "Paula is lucky I keep her around. She would not last 5 minutes on her own. She cannot even manage the basics. She is just a pretty face, nothing more." For a heartbeat, silence fell. Then came the chuckles, hesitant at first, then bolder. A few people laughed awkwardly, others smirked with open amusement. I felt their eyes on me, heavy, pitying, judgmental. My cheeks burned. My chest clenched so tight I could hardly breathe. But the worst part wasn't the laughter. It was the look in Damian's eyes. Pride. Satisfaction. As though belittling me in front of his colleagues was an act he had rehearsed. As though making me small made him appear taller. He basked in their laughter, while I was left to drown in it. I wanted to vanish, to run out of that glittering hall and escape the stares. But instead something inside me shifted. I straightened my shoulders. I forced a faint smile to my lips, though inside I was breaking. I would not give him the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. That night, as the music swelled and Damian soaked in shallow praise, I made a vow to myself. If he could strip me of dignity in public, then my revenge would rise in public as well. It would not be loud or desperate. It would be careful, deliberate, and undeniable. I did not yet know how. I did not yet know when. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Damian would pay for this humiliation. He would learn that mocking me was his greatest mistake. And when the time came, Damian would kneel. Because while he laughed beneath chandeliers, I began planning the day I would make him beg before everyone. And that day was already closer than he could imagine. The night after the gala, I lay awake beside Damian, staring at the ceiling while he slept soundly, his arm draped across the blankets as though nothing had happened. His laugh, his words, echoed in my head like a cruel refrain. "She is just a pretty face. She is nothing more." I had replayed the scene 100 times, The stares, the smirks, the weight of eyes that saw me as weak because Damian wanted them to. I told myself I would endure, that my silence would not be defeat, that revenge would come in time. But the truth was harsher. I had been betrayed in a way deeper than words. And then, as if humiliation were not enough, the second blow came. 2 days later, Damian claimed he had late meetings at the office. He kissed my cheek on his way out, his smile as polished as ever. But something felt off. His cologne lingered too long in the hallway. His voice had a practiced ease, as though he were reciting lines rather than speaking truth. I tried to ignore it at first. I told myself I was overthinking, that my wounded pride was making me paranoid. But fate has a way of stripping illusions when you need them most. That evening my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Just one sentence followed by a photograph. "You deserve to know where your husband really is." My heart hammered as I opened the photo. There was Damian, seated at a dimly lit restaurant, his hand resting on the arm of a woman I had never seen before. She was younger, striking, her dress crimson, her smile coy. Their heads leaned close, their posture intimate. I felt the ground shift beneath me. My humiliation at the gala had been the surface. Beneath it ran betrayal so deep it threatened to drown me. When Damian returned home that night, his tie loosened, his jacket slung over his shoulder, I studied his face. "How was the office?" I asked softly. He did not flinch. He lied easily. "Long, tiresome. You know how it is." And that was when I knew the truth. His silence at the gala had not been weakness, it had been choice. A man who could betray me with another woman had no reason to protect me with words. The next morning I sifted through his pockets while he showered. Receipts from restaurants I had never visited. A hotel keycard slipped between folded bills. Evidence he had not even bothered to hide. As though my humiliation had blinded me enough to never suspect. I sat at the vanity, the pearl earrings still resting in their case. My mother once told me, when a man shows you who he is, believe him the first time. I had ignored the signs. Damian's arrogance, his hunger for status, the way his love felt conditional on how I reflected his image. I had convinced myself that my devotion would soften his edges. But the man I saw now was sharper than ever. Dangerous not because of strength but because of cruelty. I did not confront him. Not yet. I smiled when he left for work. I played the role he expected, but inside something cold and sharp took root. The betrayal at the gala was no longer a wound. It was fuel. And the photograph of Damian with his mistress was the spark. He thought I was weak. He thought silence meant defeat. What he did not know was that silence can also mean planning. That night, when he returned smelling of whiskey and perfume that was not mine, I kissed his cheek and whispered good night. But as soon as he drifted to sleep, I sat at my desk and opened a blank folder. At the top I wrote a single word: revenge. Inside I began to slip the evidence. The photo message. The receipts. The keycard. Each piece of proof slid into place like bricks in a wall I would one day force him to face. He had humiliated me in public. He had betrayed me in secret. And now he would pay for both. Because as I closed the folder, I made another vow. The day would come when Damian would kneel before me, not with pride but with shame, and the world would watch. I woke the next morning with the taste of his words still on my tongue. Pretty face. Nothing more. The phrase looped for hours. It scraped at me like a stone in my shoe. I could not ignore it. I would not let it become my story. Humiliation had been the spark. Betrayal had become the fuel. I needed proof. Solid, undeniable proof that would not bend to gossip or charm. I needed the kind of evidence that would make people see the truth even if Damian smiled and lied. I started small. I pulled the phone from the charger and scrolled through messages I had ignored for months. Old text threads. Screenshots from nights he said he was at the office. Little things that did not add up. Names that appeared and disappeared. Times that were wrong. I saved every screenshot. I backed them up to a secure cloud account under a fake name. I printed copies and placed them in a folder labeled medical papers so no one would casually open it. Next I checked his coat pockets when he left for work. Men make careless mistakes when they believe their life is a well-rehearsed play. Receipts. Coffee shop I had never visited. A boutique that did not fit his taste. A hotel keycard with a date that matched a night he said he was on the office floor. I photographed everything with my phone. I took pictures of the receipt numbers, the address on the card, the timestamp. I did not touch anything that was not mine, but I cataloged every clue like a detective catalogs fingerprints. I learned how to be patient. I sat at the kitchen table while the sun crawled across the floor, and I logged each piece into a notebook. One column for dates, one column for locations, one column for why it mattered. The notebook felt heavy with intent. I wrote in neat, short sentences, each line a promise to myself. I also rescued a message I had almost deleted. An anonymous photograph had landed on my phone that night. The image of Damian with the woman in crimson. The file name was odd. It had metadata I did not understand. I uploaded it to a forensic site recommended by a forum I once read. The site returned a location tag. It matched the hotel on the receipt. The pieces were clicking into place. Still, photographs and receipts can be explained away. People lie. Cameras can be deceived. So I looked for witnesses. I started by asking the florist who had delivered the centerpiece for the gala. She remembered a woman who had asked specific questions about Damian's schedule. Her memory was vague until I mentioned the color of the woman's dress. Her eyes widened. She had seen them leaving together that night. She agreed to write a short statement. I photographed her note and tucked it into the folder. Then I turned to Damian's credit card statements, publicly accessible records for certain business filings. They spilled out months of small charges that suddenly made sense. Dinners, flowers, dinners again. I circled each entry and highlighted patterns. I copied the pages and filed them in the folder. I did not want to move too fast. A misstep could ruin everything. I kept my preparations secret. I pretended all was fine when he came home with perfume on his collar. I set 2 cups for dinner. I laughed when he told a story. I let him believe his truth was unchallenged. But while I wore the mask, I built an archive. Photos, receipts, messages, witness notes, a hotel keycard photographed at midnight, a string of text messages that, when read together, became a confession. Each piece stacked like a stone in a dam I planned to break. One night, as the folder grew thick, I found myself opening a drawer I had not opened in years. I had tucked away things there before we married. Old tax returns, a few contracts from the early years when I had still handled small freelance projects. I had never needed them. I had never shown him. But on that drawer's back wall, behind yellowed envelopes, a manila folder slipped half out. My heart stuttered when I pulled it free. Inside was a document I had not expected. It was on official letterhead. It was stamped. It bore Damian's name in a place that froze my blood. He had signed something months ago that transferred partial control of a shared account to a new manager. The signature was his. The date was last month, while he was pretending to be at the office. The document was legal. It was real. And it had been filed without my knowledge. For a moment I sat on the floor among bills and paper, the kitchen light humming overhead. I could feel the ground shift. He was not only betraying me with another woman, he was rearranging our life in secret. He was moving money. He was shifting assets. If he had taken steps to protect himself or to thin my claim to what we owned, he might try to vanish with the advantage already in his hands. My plans would have to speed up. My evidence would need to do more than shame him. It would need to stop him. I closed the drawer slowly, the document folded in my hands. The folder on the table suddenly felt too thin for what I needed to do. I made a new list. One column added, legal check. I would need counsel. I would need someone to file papers, to freeze accounts, to ensure the signatures could not be spun away. I would need allies. And as I slid the manila folder into my coat, ready to take it to a lawyer I had not yet called, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. For simple words. He is not alone tonight. I read the words twice. Then I looked at the date on the hotel receipt in my hand. It matched tonight. I closed the folder. I felt the dam break open in my chest. Tonight everything would change. The text still glowed on my phone. He is not alone tonight. My chest tightened, my pulse hammering in my ears. Every part of me wanted to storm into that hotel, confront Damian, and drag the truth out of him under the same chandeliers where he had humiliated me. But I stopped myself. Rashness would hand him control. I needed precision. Revenge, if it was to mean anything, had to be flawless. The next morning while Damian showered, I packed the folder with every receipt, every photograph, every copied statement, and slid it into my tote bag. My hand shook, but my resolve was steady. It was time to bring someone in. Someone who could help me turn raw evidence into a weapon sharp enough to cut him where it hurt most: his pride, his image, his power. I thought of Clara, my closest friend from university. Clara had become an attorney, known for her precision in family law, and her unwillingness to bend under intimidation. We had lost touch after I married Damian, his disapproval of her independence driving a wedge between us. Now I understood why he disliked her. Clara was dangerous to men like him. I drove across town to her office, the folder heavy in my lap. Her receptionist raised a brow when I walked in, but Clara herself came out moments later, her expression frozen in surprise. "Paula," she said slowly, as if speaking to a ghost. "I never thought I would see you here." I followed her into her office, sat down across from her, and placed the folder on her desk. "I need help," I said simply. Clara opened the folder, flipping through receipts, photographs, and the damning document bearing Damian's signature. Her sharp eyes scanned each page, her lips pressing tighter with every detail. When she finally looked up, her voice was hard. "You have enough to bury him," she said. "Cheating, financial misconduct, lying in public. The evidence is overwhelming. But you need strategy. If you confront him too soon, he will spin it. Men like Damian always do. If you want him to fall, you must time it so the world sees him collapse." Her words steadied me. That is exactly what I want. I want him to kneel, not in private, but in front of everyone. Clara leaned back, her gaze unwavering. "Then we do this carefully. We file preliminary petitions, prepare restraining clauses for the accounts, line up the evidence. When the time comes, we present it all in one blow. But you will need more than legal support. You will need someone who knows his habits, his patterns, his arrogance." That night I called my sister Elena. She had always been blunt, fiery, and fiercely protective of me. She had warned me years ago about Damian's charm, had told me I was blind to his hunger for status. I had dismissed her warnings then. Now I knew she had been right. When I told her everything, her fury vibrated through the phone. "He dared to humiliate you in public, and now this? No, Paula. We will not let him walk away untouched. You should have called me the night it happened. I am coming this weekend." True to her word, Elena arrived with a suitcase and eyes full of fire. She paced my kitchen as I laid out the evidence. "We will not just prove he is unfaithful. We will prove he is a fraud. We will hit him where it hurts, in his pride, in his reputation. Let the same colleagues who laughed at you watch him collapse." The three of us, Clara with her legal precision, Elena with her fire, and me with my quiet resolve, sat around my dining table late into the night. We mapped out a strategy. Clara would prepare the filings and keep the evidence airtight. Elena would help dig deeper into Damian's lies, finding cracks in his polished mask. My job was to continue the performance, to act the devoted wife while secretly building the noose. Every laugh I forced, every smile I wore was another stitch in the trap. Damian thought my silence meant weakness. In truth, it was the calm before the storm. Before we parted that night, Clara touched my hand. "When this is done, Paula, you will not just win. You will remind him, and everyone like him, that a woman underestimated is the most dangerous kind of enemy." Her words lit a fire in me that had been smoldering since the gala. But even as we built the plan, Damian was moving faster than we realized. Because the very next week, he made a public move so reckless it forced us to accelerate our timeline, or risk losing everything we had prepared. The night after Elena arrived, my dining table looked more like a war room than a place for meals. Papers were spread across every inch. Receipts, screenshots, statements, photographs. The folder I had once hidden away was now open, dissected, its contents arranged into piles of ammunition. Clara tapped her pen against the edge of the table, her eyes sharp behind her glasses. "We need to think like Damian. He believes the world is his stage. He embarrassed you publicly because he thinks humiliation strengthens his power. To bring him down, the collapse must be public too." Elena leaned forward, her voice fierce. "Then we give him a performance he cannot survive." I looked between them, my pulse steady now. "I want him on his knees in front of the same people who laughed when he mocked me." Clara nodded. Here is the counterplan. First, we freeze what he values most: money. I will file temporary injunctions against the accounts he tried to move without your consent. His arrogance will make him careless, but once the courts are involved, his signature becomes his own rope. She pushed the legal document toward me. Damian's signature glared back. Black ink on white paper, undeniable. Second, Clara continued, we gather every shred of proof of his infidelity and line it up in order: dates, times, receipts. That hotel card, the photo, the florist's note, the statements. We will create a timeline so exact that even Damian's charm cannot twist it. And when it is ready, we release it where it will hurt him most. Elena's eyes glinted. His precious company gala. Or a similar public event. Somewhere his colleagues, his superiors, his so-called friends will all be present. He humiliated you under chandeliers. He must fall under them too. I swallowed, the image searing itself into my mind. Damian's face when the evidence spread through the crowd. His voice breaking. His pride cracking. It was the justice I craved. Clara leaned closer, lowering her voice. Third, we must prepare for retaliation. Damian will fight. Men like him always do. We must anticipate his excuses. His claims of forgery. His attempt to turn blame on you. That is why the evidence must be airtight. For days we worked in secret. Elena tracked his movements, noting every late night, every false excuse. Clara assembled documents, creating a fortress of proof. I played my role as the devoted wife, greeting him with a smile, pouring his whiskey, listening to his hollow stories. But inside I catalogued everything. The way he slipped his phone face down on the table. The perfume that lingered on his jacket. The hesitation in his eyes when I asked about meetings. Each detail went into the notebook into the folder into Clara's hands. The plan grew into steps, precise and deliberate. Legal trap. Clara's filings to freeze accounts and secure assets, preventing Damian from cutting me off or running. Evidence dossier. A compiled record of his lies, formatted for both court and spectacle, designed to spread like wildfire once released. The stage. A public event timed perfectly, where Damian's own pride would draw him in, and where the reveal would shatter his mask. One evening, Elena spread the photographs across the table like playing cards. He thinks he is the dealer. Let him think that until the last moment. Then we show him we were the ones holding the winning hand all along. Her words filled me with a strange calm. Revenge was no longer a dream. It was a blueprint. And yet, beneath the calm, I felt a flicker of unease. Damian was many things. Arrogant, cruel, careless, but he was not stupid. If he sensed what I was preparing, he would strike first. Clara seemed to sense my fear. She touched my hand. The strength of this plan is patience. Do not rush. Let him believe he has already won. That is when his guard will be lowest. That is when we strike. I nodded, swallowing the fire rising in my chest. But just as we finalized our counterplan, Damian made a move none of us had expected. An ambush so sudden it threatened to unravel everything, and forced me to face the possibility that the stage we had built might collapse before the curtain even rose. The weeks of preparation had given me a strange calm. Each morning I woke knowing Damian believed he was untouchable, while in truth his downfall sat in neat folders inside Clara's locked office. Every smile I offered him, every nod at his lies, every quiet dinner where I played the role of dutiful wife, it was all part of the performance. The plan was nearly ready. Elena had tracked his patterns to the hour. Clara had the legal injunctions primed, the petitions drafted, the evidence organized into a dossier that would crush him in both court and reputation. We only needed patience. But Damian never gave patience. It was a Thursday evening when Elena burst into my living room, her phone in her hand, her face pale with fury. "Turn on the television," she ordered. I did. And there he was, Damian, standing in front of cameras, his arm draped casually around the woman in crimson I had seen in that damning photo. They were at a charity gala downtown. Flashes from cameras lighting their faces. His voice was smooth, practiced. "This," he said, gesturing toward her, "is someone who understands me. Someone who supports me in ways others could not. I am proud to be seen with her tonight." The words landed like a punch. Elena's hand clenched into a fist. Clara on speakerphone hissed through the line. "He just went public." He is announcing the affair as though it is legitimate, painting you as the bitter wife who could not keep him. Reporters shouted questions. Damian smiled. Paula is a good woman, but she never truly fit into my world. It is time I stop pretending. I wish her well, but I have to live honestly. I froze. My humiliation at the gala had been cruel enough. But this was his ambush. He had flipped the script, turning his betrayal into a performance of liberation. If left unchecked, his narrative would cement itself in the headlines. By morning, I would not just be the woman mocked at a party. I would be the discarded wife, the footnote in his story of reinvention. Elena paced like a caged tiger. We cannot wait any longer. If the story spreads, he wins. You must strike now. Clara's voice was steady but urgent. She is right. We had hoped to reveal at the next company gala. But Damian has changed the battlefield. If we let him control this story, your evidence will look like retaliation instead of truth. We must pivot. Tonight. My heart pounded as I looked at the television. Damian laughed with the woman at his side, his eyes gleaming with pride. He believed he had beaten me. I thought of the folder, the receipts, the photographs, the legal papers. I thought of the pearl earrings my mother had left me, the symbol of dignity I had clung to through every humiliation. And I knew Clara and Elena were right. We could not wait. I grabbed my clutch, slid the condensed dossier Clara had prepared for court inside, and stood. Elena's eyes widened. Where are you going? To end this, I said, my voice cold. If he wants to make a spectacle, then let us give him one he will never forget. Within the hour, Elena and I stood at the same downtown hotel where Damian's charity gala blazed with light. Cameras still swarmed the entrance, reporters buzzing with excitement about his bold reveal. But they did not know the real story, not yet. I adjusted the strap of my clutch, my heart steady now. Revenge was no longer an idea. It was here in my hands, ready to be delivered. Because before the night was over, Damian would learn that the woman he mocked, the wife he betrayed, was no shadow to discard, but the storm that would bring him to his knees. The hotel ballroom was bright and loud. Cameras flashed like a strobe. Reporters murmured and wrote. Damian moved through the crowd with the ease of a man who believed no one could touch him. The woman in crimson clung to his arm and laughed. He smiled like a man who had already won. I felt none of that. My hands were steady. My breath was calm. Clara had condensed the dossier into a slim packet I could carry in my clutch. Elena stood at my elbow, a quiet shield. We had rehearsed the steps until they felt like muscle memory. There was no improvisation. There was only timing. We walked in like guests. No one suspected. Damian nodded at me as if I belonged to the scenery. He did not expect a confrontation. That was his mistake. I moved toward the cameras. Reporters noticed a woman walking with purpose. They shifted their lenses. I ignored the stares and the whispering. I climbed the small stand near the stage where the charity hosts were speaking. The microphone hummed under my palm. "Excuse me," I said. My voice carried. It was soft, but it filled the room. "May I have a moment?" A ripple ran through the crowd. Damian's smile flickered. The woman in crimson looked confused. Reporters leaned forward, sensing a story. "I will be brief," I said. "My name is Paula. I am Damian's wife." Heads turned. Some eyebrows raised. Cameras found me. Damian laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Is this part of the show?" he asked, loud enough for many to hear. His tone was mocking. He expected me to break. I held the dossier up. Clara had printed a cover page with the words "Timeline of Deceit" in plain black letters. The sight of it made a murmur spread like wind. "You have all seen one performance tonight," I said. "A man who announced a new relationship as if he had no responsibility to the truth. But there is another performance he has practiced in secret." I opened the dossier. I slid out copies of receipts, the hotel keycard image, the text messages, the photograph, and the signed document transferring control of the account. I handed one packet to a reporter near the front. "These are facts," I said. "Not rumors. Not revenge. Facts." A camera panned in close. The reporter who received the packet thumbed through it and nodded. "Can we verify these?" she asked. "Yes," Clara said from the crowd, her voice sharp. She stepped forward, holding a folder of notarized records and a stamped filing. All of these documents are authenticated. We filed preliminary motions this morning to freeze the accounts in question. Her words landed like stones. The room shifted. Damian's face went ashen. He took a step toward me, but the woman in crimson clung to him. He tried to smile, but his eyes were panicked. "This is a stunt," he stammered. "Forgery. A frame." Clara's voice was quiet and steady. "We use public records. We verified timestamps. We traced digital metadata. If you have a defense, now is the time to present it. Otherwise, explain how those receipts, that keycard, and those messages came to be." He inhaled sharply. He had rehearsed 1,000 responses, but none matched this moment. The crowd closed in. Colleagues looked at him with a new expression. Some faces that had once smiled now held lines of doubt. I reached the core of the plan. Elena had arranged for the evening's host to pause. The charity MC stepped forward, microphone poised. She introduced a short visual. Images of the gala flashed across a screen. The camera feed cut to the hotel footage Elena had obtained. There, in grainy resolution but clear enough, was Damian entering the suite at midnight on a date that matched the hotel receipt. The broadcast captured his arm around the woman in crimson. The room fell silent. A reporter stood and asked the question everyone wanted to hear. "Damian, how do you respond to this evidence?" He faltered. "These images, these are..." He looked at his colleagues as if begging for rescue. None offered it. The man who had been so quick to humiliate me at the company had no allies left in the room. I stepped closer. I spoke slow, each word a stone on his path down. "You made me small in front of your colleagues. You made me a joke. You thought you could erase me and move on publicly. Tonight you gave me a stage. I gave you evidence." I placed the signed document on the lectern. "You signed this last month. You had the power to move money and you did it without my consent. You lied about where you were. You lied to your colleagues. You lied to me." He looked at the paper like a man watching his own life dissolve. Sweat beaded at his temple. For the first time I saw fear in his eyes. It was the fear of a man who knows the rules can be used against him. Then he did something I had imagined only in private. He dropped to his knees. The gasp was immediate. Cameras zoomed in on the fall of a man who only weeks before had stood like a king. He put his head in his hands and muttered something about mistake and regret. His colleagues circled, some stunned, some cold. I had planned to make him kneel metaphorically. I had not expected the literal sight of him on the floor. For the spectators, the image was cinematic and final. A man who once thought himself untouchable was now diminished in the same public light that had once shamed me. Reporters shouted questions. Phones recorded. Damian's voice was a broken thing. "Paula, please," he said, but the plea evaporated in the roar of the crowd. From the edge of the room I watched his collapse. I felt not triumph but a hollow, strange relief. The dossier had done what it needed to do. The truth had reshaped the story. The man who had laughed now crumpled. But as cameras circled and people leaned in to watch the fall, someone from security slipped through the press. Their face was pale. They were holding a note. They mouthed 2 words at me that made the room go colder. "Call the police." The ballroom was a storm. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras whirred. Damian remained on his knees, his face buried in his hands, a broken figure where once he had stood as if on a throne. I should have felt triumphant, but instead I felt the strange weight of history turning in front of me. Then I saw the man from security, weaving through the crowd. He held a folded note, his expression pale, urgent. He pushed past the cameras, pressed the note into my hand, and whispered 2 words before stepping back. "Call police." For a moment I could not breathe. My fingers trembled as I unfolded the slip. The handwriting was quick, jagged. Said only this: "Check the accounts now." He moved money again. I looked up sharply. Clara was at the edge of the stage, her phone already in hand. She had seen the note. Her eyes widened as she tapped furiously at the secured portal she used to monitor filings. She mouthed something at me. He tried again tonight. The camera still pointed at Damian. Reporters demanded answers. Some colleagues whispered with satisfaction, enjoying the downfall of a man who had always been arrogant. The woman in crimson had slipped quietly away, her absence a silent betrayal. Elena was at my side, her jaw tight, her voice low. He is cornered, Paula. But cornered animals are dangerous. I stepped down from the stage, the note clutched in my palm. Damian looked up, his eyes red, his face wet. He tried to reach for me. Paula, listen please, it was not what it looked like. I was under pressure. I made mistakes. I can explain. No, I said softly, steady enough that microphone still caught it. You cannot explain betrayal. You cannot rewrite humiliation. You cannot erase proof. The crowd murmured. His colleagues shifted uneasily. The man who had once been the company's rising star was unraveling in real time, each word pulling him deeper into disgrace. But Clara's voice cut through the chaos. She stepped forward, her phone raised, her tone calm but hard. Paula, it is true. He tried again tonight. He submitted a late-night transfer request to move funds overseas. The bank flagged it, but the attempt is recorded. It proves intention to hide assets. The ballroom erupted again. Reporters nearly shoved each other to capture her words. Damian's head snapped toward her, his face pale. That is not possible, he croaked. How would you even know? Because I am her lawyer, Clara said, her voice ringing across the hall. And because you left a trail. You always leave a trail, Damian. The power shifted visibly. The people in the room no longer saw me as the humiliated wife. They saw me as the woman standing with undeniable proof, allies at her side, and the law already moving. Damian staggered to his feet, desperation in his eyes. You cannot do this. You cannot destroy me like this. Paula, I can fix it. We can fix it together. Just stop this now and I will. You will what? I asked, my voice steady. Lie again? Cheat again? Humiliate me again in front of people who only care about your image? He had no answer. The silence that followed was louder than any speech. Elena leaned closer to me. It is over for him. But you need to be careful. If he is still trying to move money, then this is bigger than adultery. He may have legal trouble that could splash onto you if you do not step away cleanly. Security stepped forward at Clara's nod, guiding Damian gently but firmly out of the room. Reporters followed like vultures, their cameras flashing until the doors closed. The crowd began to disperse, but the murmurs did not stop. People shook their heads, whispered words like fraud, liar, finished. For years Damian had lived on charm. Tonight that charm had died in front of everyone. I stood there, my pulse slowing, my breath deepening. The image was seared into me. Damian on his knees begging, his empire dissolving. It was everything I had vowed to make happen. And yet the note in my pocket reminded me it was not finished. He had been reckless enough to try moving money in the middle of his own collapse. That meant desperation. That meant danger. Clara touched my arm gently. We must prepare the filings tonight. The police will want statements. We will handle this, Paula. You have already won the public battle. Now we secure the legal one. I nodded, my voice quiet. He thought he could silence me with laughter. Tonight he was silenced by truth. But as I left the ballroom, flashes still chasing me, I knew tomorrow would bring a different battlefield. Because humiliation was complete, but now came the day after consequences, when the world decides who truly rises and who finally falls. The morning after the gala, the world felt different. My phone buzzed endlessly, notifications stacking one after another. Messages from people I had not spoken to in years, emails from journalists, even calls from distant relatives who had once questioned my choice of Damian. The headlines were everywhere. Rising executive brought to his knees by wife's evidence. Damian Cole exposed. Infidelity, fraud, and public collapse. Photos of him kneeling, head in hands, had gone viral overnight. The image replayed on morning news shows. Analysts debating not his career but his integrity, his arrogance, his downfall. My name appeared too. Paula Cole, the wife who fought back. Some called me brave. Others called me ruthless. But no one called me weak anymore. As I sipped coffee at the kitchen table, Elena scrolled through her phone with a smirk. You are trending. Look at this. Paula, the storm. People are quoting your words from last night. You cannot explain betrayal. You cannot rewrite humiliation. They are already turning it into headlines. I felt a strange calm. Not joy, not even satisfaction, just clarity. For so long I had been made small in Damian's shadow. Now the light revealed the truth, and I was not the one crumbling. Clara arrived mid-morning, legal folders in hand, her expression brisk. The police contacted me. They are opening an investigation into Damian's financial movements. The attempted transfer last night triggered security alerts. The bank confirmed the request originated from his device. She placed papers on the table. We have already filed for asset protection. You are secure. His actions will not touch you. Relief mingled with determination. So it is real. He will face more than disgrace. Yes, Clara said firmly. Infidelity destroys trust. Fraud destroys freedom. Damian is looking at both. The phone rang again. Another journalist requesting an interview. I ignored it. My story was no longer for Damian's world to consume. It was mine and I would tell it on my own terms. By afternoon, the company Damian had once adored released a statement. Effective immediately, Damian Cole is suspended pending investigation. His name was already being scrubbed from promotional materials. His once prized seat on the executive board replaced by silence. Elena chuckled darkly. The same people who laughed when he mocked you are now laughing at him. Poetic, isn't it? But I did not laugh. I looked at the pearl earrings in my hand, the ones I had worn to the gala, and thought of my mother's voice. Dignity cannot be taken. It can only be surrendered. Last night, I had chosen not to surrender. Damian called once. His number flashed on my phone. I stared at it, my chest heavy before pressing decline. He texted minutes later. Please. Just meet me. I can explain everything. I need you. I deleted it without answering. He had needed me when cameras adored him, when colleagues praised him. But when I needed him to defend me, to speak against his father's scorn, to stand against humiliation, he had chosen silence. Now his pleas were echoes I no longer heard. As evening fell, Clara, Elena, and I sat together once more. The evidence was safe, the filings complete, the investigation moving. The battle of truth was won. Yet I knew there was one last chapter. A public ending deserves a public lesson. My silence had once been his weapon, but now my voice was my shield. I needed to speak, not to Damian but to those who had watched, judged, and doubted. Because tomorrow I would step in front of cameras not as a victim, not as a wife defined by betrayal, but as Paula, the woman who turned humiliation into fire and fire into victory. The next day I walked into the press conference with my head high. Cameras flashed, reporters jostled for space, their lenses trained not on Damian this time but on me. For years I had been nothing more than a shadow in his world, someone he used as decoration, someone he could diminish with a careless laugh. Now the light belonged to me. I wore the same midnight blue gown from the company gala, the one he had mocked, the one I had once wished I could burn after that night. This time I wore it as armor. My mother's pearl earrings glimmered softly, reminding me that dignity does not come from jewels or titles. It comes from strength that cannot be bought. I stepped up to the microphone. The room hushed. My name is Paula. I began, my voice steady. And many of you already know what happened last night. You saw a man try to humiliate his wife. You saw him try to rewrite betrayal into a story of freedom. And you saw the truth rise to the surface anyway. I did not come here to gloat. I came here to remind you that silence in the face of cruelty is not weakness. Sometimes silence is patience. Sometimes silence is the space where strength is built. The cameras clicked. Reporters scribbled. I continued. For years Damian made me believe I was small. He convinced others I was nothing but a pretty face. And when I was humiliated in front of his world, I nearly believed it myself. But humiliation can do one of two things. It can destroy you, or it can sharpen you. I chose to let it sharpen me. I chose to gather evidence, to build allies, to stand on truth instead of lies. And when the moment came, I chose to speak. I paused, scanning the crowd, letting the silence stretch long enough that the weight of my words sank in. Betrayal is a wound, but humiliation is a fire. If you let it, that fire will forge you into something stronger than those who tried to break you. Last night, Damian learned that truth cannot be erased with charm, and pride cannot survive when faced with evidence. He wanted me to kneel before him. Instead, he knelt before everyone. The murmurs swelled. Some reporters nodded. Others stared, transfixed. I am not here to tell you that revenge is sweet, I said, my voice softening. I am here to tell you that revenge is justice when humiliation is the crime. I did not raise my voice. I did not throw anger back at cruelty. I built my case, I waited for the stage, and I let the truth do the work. And the truth was louder than any insult ever spoken against me. Behind me, screens played images of the previous night. Damian on his knees, reporters pressing in, Clara standing firm with documents in hand. The image no longer haunted me. It empowered me. I leave you with this, I finished. Never let someone else's laughter define your worth. Never let someone else's silence erase your voice. And never forget that when they call you nothing, you may already hold everything you need to rise. The applause that followed was not wild, but it was steady, firm, sincere. I stepped away from the microphone, the sound echoing through the hall like a promise. Outside, the world moved on. Damian's name continued to spiral downward, suspended from his company, under investigation for financial misconduct, abandoned by the colleagues who once praised him. The woman in crimson vanished as quickly as she had appeared. His empire of arrogance collapsed brick by brick. As for me, I walked forward lighter. I had not just survived humiliation. I had rewritten it into strength. That night, sitting by the window, the city lights glimmering like distant stars, Elena touched my hand. You did it. He is finished. I smiled faintly. No, I am finished with him. My story does not end in his shadow. It begins now in my own light. And that is the lesson I leave with you. This was my story. If you have ever been belittled, betrayed, or humiliated, remember, you hold more power than you think. Gather your truth, hold your silence until it is ready to roar, and never forget, you are stronger than the ones who tried to break you. Stay with me for more stories of betrayal turned into strength, silence turned into fire, and revenge that restores dignity. Because this was not the end. It was only the beginning.